Hello, my name's Ian Bailey, and I want you to come around the world with me, and I will show you how archaeologists, how scientists have gotten history wrong. We're going to show you the amazing underwater structures, the incredible truth about Machu Picchu, and all the other amazing architectural wonders that this world has to offer. Now, Steve is going to talk about science, and science is all well and good, but when you have to move a 400-ton stone, or when you explain to me how or why a Stone Age race would build cities underwater, that really doesn't make any sense to me. So I'm going to talk to you about the history, what the archaeologists and historians say happened, and then we're going to talk about the mythology, and some elements of science that have been repressed. No one wants to talk about how the sea levels rise, about roads going into the ocean, about structures, buildings, entire cities underwater off the coast of India. We're going to talk about things that will blow your mind. Steve, you know, I may be waxing poetic, but I'm not going to be waxing poetic at all when you're trying to move a stone with levers that is impossible to move. I may be waxing poetic, but my mythology and aliens sounds way better than a Stone Age race that thought that Ra came across the sun. I may be waxing poetic, but I sound a lot... Go for it. I may be waxing poetic, but it's going to sound a whole lot better than your excuses, than your reasons, than your way of doing it, because Steve, your whole theory and conjecture doesn't make any sense, because you have to remember, today's science fiction is tomorrow's science fact, just like yesterday's science fiction is today's science fact. There are amazing things in this world that need to be discovered, and we're going to show you, and there's no possible way that science can explain some of these things. It might have been aliens, it might have been mythology, it might have been things that we can't even understand or begin to explain, but I'm going to tell you right now, when you try and apply modern science to it, it just simply doesn't work. There's no way, Steve, there's no way that modern science could get this stuff done. Steve, I understand what you're telling me, but when you look at the science doesn't add up. How exactly did these people pull these stones up mountains, across rivers? I mean, floating them makes more sense than pulling them. So how did these people even move this stuff? I mean, you're telling me that a bunch of dudes rolled these stones on rocks, that they rolled them on woods, that an entire group of people was like, sure, I'd be happy to go ahead and pull stones for 20 years. That sounds like a great time. Oh, for sure. I have no doubt that if we decided to get a bunch of people to go ahead and build the pyramids, we could totally do that in 20 years. If we had all the modern technology that we needed, but not with loincloths and bronze tools. There's just no way. Steve, here's the thing. When you look at the math and the science behind these different structures that are supposedly getting older and older and older with time, I mean, the pyramids were said to be 6,000 years old. And I mean, we're talking about archaeology that was done 100 years ago. Now, I appreciate that you're going to get the science of this, and I appreciate you're going to try and break it down, and you're going to look at the way, but I think that you've been given the wrong information by the archaeologists. I think that people were way more advanced than we give them credit for. And whether you prove me right or wrong, it's still going to be fascinating to take a look at. But I'll tell you what, Ancient Aliens is a lot more fascinating and a lot more interesting, and is a lot more plausible than some of the water or moving through levers, or I mean, like, levitation sounds like a lot easier. I mean, think about it. If I would have told you 100 years ago that I could talk to anybody on the planet face to face from my little device, even 30 years ago, look at Star Trek. We're talking to people face to face. Could you imagine? What if we've just got a culture full of it? What if we're just a culture of amnesia and we're too arrogant to think that people before us could have known more than us? Steve, you're wrong and you're dumb and you don't know. Steve, you have no idea what you're talking about. For all the science in the world, you can't explain it with modern science. We're discovering new things every day that show how science today makes no sense and can't be applied. I mean, we're discovering new things every day. And Steve, I think you're gonna have a lot of opportunity to show throughout this thing that there's just no way modern science could do these things. There's no way a modern crane could have done them. Now, I'm going to take a look at the mythology. I'm going to take a look at the stories. I'm going to take a look at the local myth as to how this was done. And some of it sounds obscene, some of it sounds absurd, but you know what? It comes up all over the world. You have consistent myths of floods. You have consistent myths of spaceships. You have consistent myths of gods procreating and mating with human beings all over the world. And you're gonna tell me that's coincidence? You have numbers like 72, and you have the Mayans that hold a calendar that's millions of years in length. That just doesn't make any sense. Where do these advanced things come from? Where does all of this knowledge spring up from? You know, the Egyptian culture sprang up from nothing. The Inca culture sprang up from nothing. That's impossible. It's like finding a Ferrari without seeing the Model T. Steve, I understand what you're saying, and I understand you're going to rely on science, but I rely on stories. You're going to rely on science, and I'm going to rely on stories. Now, maybe that might not seem fair, but I'll tell you what, some of those stories are pretty convincing. And when you come to your rope's end on trying to explain it with science, that's where my stories pick up to be able to explain it. Because someone's trying to communicate, and I'll tell you what, there's no real better way to communicate than a massive stone object out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, look at the pyramids. They're supposed to be a tomb, right? What kind of halfwit would put a tomb in the middle of the Gaza Strip and then expect nobody to go in and look at it? That's the worst plan ever. Now, if I wanted to leave a memory of myself, what's the best plan ever? Leaving a massive monument built of stone that's immovable with time and effort and age and length of everything, and has outlasted everything? So I'm telling you right now, Steve, there's some things that you're going to be able to explain away. There's some things that you're going to be able to decipher with science, but there's other things that you just can't explain away. There's other things that you're not going to be able to decipher. There are some things where when you look at it, there's simply no way you can explain it given the scientific technology that you're given of that day. There's going to be some cases where you're going to show me that I'm wrong, Steve, but I'm telling you what, there's going to be some cases where we arrive at a scene and we're given the tools. And I show you the tools that historians and archaeologists say these people had, and you're going to look at them and you're going to say there's no way they moved a 254-ton block up the side of a mountain and pieced it perfectly together with other stones of equal or slightly smaller size with the technology they had. And you know what, Steve? That's when the aliens come in. That's when the advanced technology comes in. That's when the conspiracy theory comes in. Because I'll tell you what, when you can't explain it, all of a sudden, those myths and theories and conjecture become a lot more factual. Because you know what? Let's be honest. Archaeologists and historians, they're just storytellers that sometimes really aren't that good. So we might as well make up our own story, or at least look at the facts. Either A, we don't know what we're talking about when it comes to putting together these massive stone objects, these incredible architectural feats aligned to the seasons and the stars, or we really don't understand what happened and when. So either the archaeologists are wrong, or the people were much, much smarter than we gave them credit for, because these things just don't line up. You know, don't throw a bottle of water at me and tell me it's raining. So let's take a look at this. Let's use myth. Let's use stories. Let's look at the history, compare it against the myth, and look at the building blocks that are actually practical with Steve, who disagrees with me on occasion, and I usually disagree with him. But I'll tell you what, we're going to give you a great opportunity to see these amazing things. We're discovering things over and over again that are thousands upon thousands of years old that are inexplainable. So we're going to talk about things that are thousands upon thousands of years old, that are inexplainable, that have been passed down from generation to generation. And you know how? Because they were built out of massive blocks of stone. And that's how they exist. Often people say, how come there's no evidence of lost civilizations anywhere? And you're like, well, Machu Picchu, giant fortress on the top of a hill in the middle of a rainforest. We can't even keep a house on the top of Malibu for 30 years. It's like God's joke on rich people. But yet this 500-year-old culture can easily build a colossus on top of this mountain. Or what about the pyramids? That's a pretty big sign that somebody was here before us that could do some really cool stuff. I mean, the center stone in the middle of the king's chamber is 120 tons, lifted 163 feet in the air with precisionally put into place. Yeah, that's totally easy, right? Not at all. Not at all. And that's what we want to get the root of. We don't necessarily want to answer the questions, but we want to make sure you guys know that there's questions that have been unanswered, and to not dismiss when somebody says, this is how it was done, for sure. Because you know what? They really don't know. And we have the right to go have some fun and check it out. Because who knows? What if we're wrong? But the better thing is, what if we're right? Now, the thing here is that it's really easy to be wrong. We can go in, we can check it out, but the most fascinating part is, the most electrifying part is, the most mind-boggling part is what if we're not wrong? What if we're right? What if there's some truth to these different elements? Some people pass it off and say, oh no, that's not possible. Well, you know what? The only difference between truth and science fiction is science fiction has to sound plausible. And you never forget that, because the truth is our memory is so short. We can barely remember what happened yesterday. And remember, history is written by the victors. There's stories all over South America of massive gold stones. There's stories all over South America of massive gold tablets being melted down, of huge arrays of scriptures from the Maya being burned. The reason why we don't know is because we destroyed the evidence, and we are going to go find out. We're going to explore. We're going to travel all over this world and find out what there is to know, find out what there is to see, and ask the questions that people have put to bed, that should be risen, that should be explored, that should be exposed. Because you know what? More and more every day we're finding out things are older, things are more ancient, things are more dynamic, things are more complicated than we could have ever imagined. And the simplest answer is there must be more. There has to be more. There is adventure in this world. There is mystery in this world. There is a phenomenal emergence of amazing knowledge in this world, and we can't ignore it, nor should we. So come with me on the adventure of a lifetime to go find out whether this is just conjecture or true, and you decide for yourself whether myself, mythology, and possibly ancient scriptures are right, or whether science is right. And you know what? I feel that science is more and more back in my side. But that's a deal between me and Steve. So you can either back Steve, back me, or you know what? Just listen in and decide for yourself. Because the truth is, we're probably not going to come up with any real concrete answers. But what we are going to do is we're going to create a lot more questions. And those questions are a whole lot of fun to not only ask, but to make up different stories like aliens and elves and dwarves. And why not? Why not? So come with me, Ian Bailey and Steve Hanneman, as we explore this world. We ask questions, we open your mind, we open your heart, and we open you. So come with me, Ian Bailey, and my friend Steve Hanneman, as we come and we look at these different things all over the planet, and we open up your mind and hearts to different ideas. If you think adventure is dead, if you think that the idea and days of Indiana Jones are gone, you're wrong. We're just getting started. We're discovering new things every day. This world is mysterious, wondrous, and full of secrets. And this world is full of wonder, full of mysteries, full of secrets, full of new things to discover. And don't you let any history professor or archaeologist or academic tell you otherwise. You go out, you find out for yourself, just like us. And you know what? You might find more than you bargained for. And you might grow as a human being, but I'll tell you what, it's gonna be a lot of fun. So you get out there, you explore, you check out this world, because this world is full of mystery, full of wonder, full of amazing things. And don't let any academic, archaeologist, or historian tell you everything's been figured out, or whatever they say is exactly right. Because you know what? They're doing the best job they can, but more and more they're finding out there's more out there, and it can be discovered, opened up, and explored. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. You pursue your adventure, you live your dream, you go seek that. You might get more than you bargained for, but you might grow as well.